Okay, so this is exactly how we take a wheel off. So it's a technique with the rear mech. In the ideal situation, you put the gears down onto the smallest cog at the back. It gives us the most chain play, and we know exactly what cog to put it on. When we put the wheel back in, we know exactly what cog we're fitting it back to. This is a clutch rear mech, so I need to switch the clutch off with it. If you're a road cyclist or commuter, you're not going to have a clutch on it generally. They're starting to move more towards clutches, but the clutch means that your chain's tight and it's hard to push this forward. When I switch the clutch off, it tells you on and off on it when you look at it the right way up. When you switch the clutch off, the chain is slack. Now I can move this back and forth quite easily. I'm going to take the axle out first, so I switch this off. Doesn't matter too much about this when you take the axle off, but I'm going to unscrew the axle. This has got a 6mm Allen key on it. Pull the axle out. You have to give it a little wiggle sometimes to pull the axle out, but set the axle to the side just now. Remember with the axle tip, don't sit the axle tip on a dirty surface because you're just going to get dirt onto your threads and going to cause thread issues as time goes on. If you own the bike for quite a few years, you might have to buy a new axle with it because the threads will wear out. Small cog. I'm putting my thumb on the middle of the rear mech and then my fingers down the back of it, and I'm kind of levering everything through. So I'm levering things like that. Now we've got a big nice clear gap all the way to the axle. Like this here, it's very hard to get it out that way there. So smallest cog, grabbing it with my thumb and my fingers back here. Just watch, don't put your fingers through the mech, just kind of keep it on the outside and lever it back. Now we've got a straight gap up out, and I can lift. Now when I'm lifting it, there's still a bit of tension in the chain from this. So when I lift this axle up, I'm kind of lifting the wheel slightly back as well, just so it doesn't slide straight forward, up and out. Once it's past the rear mech, let go of the rear mech, lift the chain off the top, and out she comes. And vice versa when I'm putting it back in, over the top here. The top part of the chain here doesn't matter so much, so I can just sit it further up the cog. So that's on cog number 4 now, counting from the bottom. I'm going to put my thumb here and my finger just on this part here, so it lifts this up, and then I can use I'm using my thumb to pull back and my finger to lift this here up. Then when I'm pushing down here, this chain that's now touching the bottom half of the chain, I know it's the smallest cog I'm fitting it to, because I already know I've done the gears before I've turned the bike upside down. Smallest cog, and as I push it down, I'm still keeping pressure on my thumb, and just before it goes in towards the frame, I'm looking across at my disc to make sure my disc goes straight in between the pads. It's definitely in between the pads now, into the frame, and as it clunks down into the frame, I can then let go of my hand and just make sure it's definitely in the frame. So you give the wheel a little wobble left and right, just make sure it's definitely in. And this one here, you can kind of see as I'm putting pressure on it, it's still, the chain tension itself is trying to pull the wheel up and out slightly. So when I put my axle in, I put my axle back in, I'm going to wiggle on it slightly to get it through, and then when it gets to this end here, you're not going to catch the thread unless you push the whole wheel into the frame a bit, so it can hold the bike and kind of put a little bit of pressure on it. It's definitely deep in the frame, and now I can screw the axle all the way in. I'll take it back out once more just to demonstrate. So axle out, the clutch is still off, with a thumb on it and fingers at the back here, lift it out, and as I lift the wheel up, I'm going back slightly diagonally, up and out like that there. There we go, that's a wheel out. Now, taking the tyre off. Oh yeah. Take the tyre off, we start at the valve, put the tyre back on, we finish at the valve. This is a flat tyre just now, so I'm just going to make sure it's definitely flat all the way, make sure all the air's out of it, give it another wee squish down, nice flat inner tube. Popping it off the bead, remember we talked about the bead before? When it's on the bead, it sits up higher on this ledge. Pop it off, you need to have it off the bead down here. The easiest way to do is just to do one side of the tyre at once. and I would pop this off the bead all the way around, lift it over the edge of the rim, and then I'll do the other side if I'm taking the tyre all the way off. If I'm just doing an inner tube, you just need to work from one side of the tyre, you don't need both sides off. In this case, it's already off the bead because this is the demonstration wheel we've already used this evening. Big lump of grease there. So it's already popped off the bead. I know it's off the bead because if you just pull the tyre at the side so that you can see the inner of the rim there, you can see it's easily visible. I'm going to start at the valve here, so I'm pushing the tyre lever down, pull the tyre back a bit, push the tyre lever down, not right at the valve. I'm going to come slightly back from the valve, push it down at an angle into it till it lips just underneath the tyre, and see, you can see I've caught both sides of the tyre, so this is a reason why you would just debead one side. You just want to have one half of the tyre at that point. So I kind of wiggle the tyre lever back out just so I've got one, just want to catch one edge of the tyre. You'll never do both edges at once and get it off easily. One edge up and over, and with the Pedros I can just hook it onto a spoke quite easily. The next one I'll go either just beyond the valve and put it back in and try and get the lip, or we can go up beside the already tyre lever that's in, go up beside it and then move it round. This is a brand new tyre, so this technique here will work quite well because it's a brand new fresh rubber tyre. Older tyres get a bit more perish and it gets harder and harder to slide along there, so you're better off taking the lever and go down. And you see, you're trying to get it, so you're not going to get the tyre lever in here, and you're not going to get the tyre lever in here easily. You want to get it just as it comes off over the edge, so you can kind of put it in, slide it up a bit, and it kind of hooks up under itself. And then I've got two tyre levers with me, so I'm just going to pull the bottom one down, and I'll do the same again, but rather than to start further around, I'll come back this way here, and I'll go the other way. And again, put the tyre lever in, slide it along. If it can do it. Up and under. Now I've got a good portion coming out. And if it's still stiff at that, rather than pulling it and hitting your knuckles off the spokes, you can just repeat the process. And that, once it kind of pops like that there, that's the tension released from it, and that's it coming loose. Take the tyre lever, flip it all the way around, and there we go, one side of the tyre off. So that's us starting at the valve. When we're going to finish, when we put it back on, we'll finish at the valve, just because the valve is the tightest spot to put the tyre on and off. So we've got the valve here, I need to get the tube out, and because we're going to leave the tyre on, I will peel the tyre up and over and exposed just the inner tube sitting there, so I can pull that inner tube up and out without having to remove the whole tyre. This is because it's got a long press on it. If you've got shorter valves, you might not have to, you can maybe do it with the tyre sitting over the top. So inner tube out, and like I said earlier in the video, I'm checking for thorns. The tubes went flat for a reason. I don't remember hitting a pothole and getting a pinch flat, so I'm going to check there's no thorns in it. You're checking for tiny little, like it's not going to be too obvious on the surface, but it's just going to be tiny little dots of dirt. Generally it's not on one of the treads, it's kind of sitting down on the carcass itself. So you're running your fingers through the inside here, watching with your eye as well. Before your finger comes through, you're watching with your eye, because if it's a piece of glass, you want to see the glass first before you put your hand over it. Try and visual it with your eyes first. Pretend I've been all the way around this here because it's a brand new tyre. I know it's not got an issue with it. Happy enough with that there. Putting the inner tube back in. So if I've patched this inner tube, this is about the amount of air I want to have in it. You know, it's just holding its shape and no more. It's not scorn flat, you know, it's not flat like this. It's just holding its air and holding its shape enough. So I'm not going to get a pinch flat when I'm putting it back in. Valve hole there, so again, I'm going to peel the tyre back, put the valve in. So I've got the valve closed at this stage because the valve's a bit stronger when it's closed like that. If you leave it open, you've got more chance of snapping the head off of it. So valve closed, pop it in, then put the tyre back over the top. It's at this stage here, if you're especially if you've got bigger tyres, I would put the locking nut probably about about halfway up it, so the valve's not going to just disappear on me. The valve's going to stay there. I'm now going to put the tube into it all the way, and I'll start opposite the valve. I'm going to start back here, start at the top, and I'm going to work my way around. I'm just popping the bead on as I'm going around, pushing the tyre onto the rim, making sure that this is where the tube's slightly inflated, kind of gets in your way a bit, but you don't want to underinflate it. So pushing the tube in, and then just working the tyre all the way around. See how I'm using my thumb to kind of press. My fingers on the back touching the rim, and my thumb to press. Now once I've got to about that amount there, I'm going to take a tyre lever and kind of hold it up there. And just hold it on there. You'll notice the tyre lever itself is just on the edge of the rim, and I can hold it with one hand. And now I don't need to, it's not going to keep chasing me around. I'll start here and go anti-clockwise around it, making sure it's off the bead all the way with my finger, pushing it off the bead. This is went back on the bead at the bottom, so pushing it off the bead all the way. I'll try again with my hand to work it round, and as it starts to get tight in this last bit, I'll tie the lever. So as we start to get tight towards the last bit here, I'll check that it's still off the bead the whole way around. It's still off the bead, it keeps popping off because it's a very loose tyre, this one. So my left hand is holding it, and now my right hand is going to start chasing the, so I'm going to pop it on, pull it out, pop it in a bit further. You need to kind of get just enough pressure on it that's going to stay in place. So I've only got the last kind of 6 inches to go, and it's at the valve that I'll be concentrating it. So I'm going to make sure my left hand is still tight, my right hand right at the valve now, and the last bit here. And this is when it gets to this can be the tightest part here when it's like this. So again, if you can't keep your left hand in, just do that, because it might try and pop itself off when it's in the final stage. I'm checking it's off the bead all the way around with my finger. Make sure I get my finger in there. The last bit to go here. So this is where, on a road bike, having a thinner tyre lever helps. This is nice and thin, so this one can fit up in that gap nice and easily without causing too much issue, and clicks the last of it on. Hope that works for you. So the Pedros ones are the ones that we use most commonly. That's the tyre back on, and then once more I'll show you it going back on the bike. Smallest cog, so we're aiming for lift it onto the bike, lift the chain up, and I'll kind of sit the chain maybe a 3rd or 4th cog up there. Put my thumb on the middle, so the middle pivot point, so 1 arm, 2 arm, and go for the pivot point there. And then with my fingers, I'm going to lift this up slightly, just so when I push this back, I want this here to engage and come up the way. So thumb on there, fingers on, and as my thumb is pulling the whole mechanism back. Now as I sit the wheel down, I'm going on to the smallest cog with a chain, and I'm rolling it down, and before it goes into the frame, I'm checking the disc. The disc is clear, we're in the frame, and that's us home. Same again with the axle, little wobble, make sure it's staying in place, axle in, and screw the axle in from there. To check that I've got it right and there's no issues, give it a little pedal. Now can you see that the tyre's kind of bobbing about a bit, just because there's no air in it just now, it's not quite sitting on the bead. So when you pump the tyre up to pressure, this one, like I say, is 55 psi maximum, so if I pump this up to 45, 50 psi, whatever tyre pressure I'm running this tyre at, once it's at pressure, you want to spin it, and it should look nice and even. You know, there shouldn't have any issues with it. So just like this front tyre here, when I spin it, there's no real undulation with it. But when I spin the back wheel, see the undulation? I'm just looking at this part here, see the undulation it's got, and you can see how it bobs up and down, just because it's off the bead completely. So when I pump that up to pressure, that should all go on the bead. nice and easily. What have I missed out on this one? Brakes back on correctly. Like I said with the patches, you put the glue on to start with. If it's on a rib, then make sure you sand the rib down a bit. Put the glue on, wait until the glue goes tacky, it looks almost dry. Then you stick your patch on. You want to make sure that you feather, so you're kind of pushing these edges out. Once you've got them all pushed out, I would leave the clear film on it, just so any excess glue you got round about it kind of covers that up, and then that's good to go. So maybe 2 minutes at most. I would leave it drying, and then you can put a little bit of air in it. Like I said, a little bit of air will help you before you get it back into the tyre, and then away you go, back into the tyre back on the rim with the tube in it, inflate it. And when we're talking about the valve nut here, so it's halfway up the now when I was fitting it. I'll kind of screw it in a little bit more than now. I would then inflate it, make sure it's inflated well, and then you can screw it all the way down. It's not until you've got it properly inflated can you screw that in, because when it's deflated the now, the valve itself is still sitting in a bit. When you inflate it fully, the valve pushes back out and it'll sit in a better place. Hopefully that's covered everything. If I've missed anything out, obviously, please send us a message or leave a comment. I'm not sure if you can leave a comment on the private videos, but send me a message and I'll do another little video and add it to this stream. Thanks for watching.